Magnetic spaces, revolutionary brands. As Sri Lanka's shoppers evolve, so do the spaces that shape how they experience brands. Magnetic spaces, revolutionary brands uncovers how interior design is transforming stores into immersive destinations, where technology meets sustainability and global innovation meets local craftsmanship. Today, a renowned panel of designers, brand builders, retail innovators will share how the next generation is creating experience-led environments that captivate, connect, and redefine the way we shop. I'd like to invite our session chair and moderator, Philip Weeraratne, one of Sri Lanka's most renowned architects and founder of PWA Architects, who will be leading the discussion with our esteemed panelists, Shalin Balasuriya, visionary entrepreneur, brand strategist and co-founder Sparsilon, Annika Fernando, interior designer and entrepreneur, founder of PR and Mouse, Niloufer Anverally, pioneering fashion entrepreneur in Sri Lanka, founder of Cotton Collection, and Hasib Omar, a leading figure in Sri Lanka's apparel industry, serving as a director at Boost Clothing. A warm welcome to all of you. Please join us on stage. Thank you.
Official. As it was said, thank you for your patience. I think our intention and all our intention, I think your privilege to have, other than me, such an amazing panel of panelists. Truly they are here because they want to share their story and hopefully also inspire you. I think one of the things that we need to do in Sri Lanka right now is rather than just applaud each other, because as an architect I always say we are very good at giving each other awards and thinking we are really great. But I think why, when Dinda asked me to create a panel, why I chose all of them is that I think they've always pushed the boundaries of not just being comfortable with what you can do in Sri Lanka and then have everybody say, oh wow, this is a great product or it's a great interior, but really always push the boundaries of not just being comfortable and being settled in your comfort zone. So unfortunately I can't show you, but I had a small little slide intro. Hopefully the slides will work at the end of the presentation so I can just go back, because I think Sri Lanka in itself has we like to talk about a rich heritage, but also we've had a not so distant past heritage of amazing artists, architects and designers who created a sort of a legendary story, and it's good for us to go back. So I hope that even though we have a very short period, that we can really inspire ourselves as well as inspire and motivate each other. So I have a few questions or points of discussion that I have written down here, and I want to start off with that. So the slides are up. Okay, cool. So I want to just quickly show you and revive our minds about some of our great artists and sculptors. So Lucky is I don't need to talk a lot about him, but Lucky Senanak is an amazing artist who also did immersive work that actually, so I remember when I was very young, we did a shop. I think it's not working. So we did a shop and I engaged Lucky to do a wall mural. And so Lucky comes from a group of artists who in the early 40s and late 40s and early 50s, and they had to innovate and come up with, we couldn't import anything. So you couldn't import material, you couldn't import stuff. So they actually innovated and created art that actually immersed with retail design. So we used Lucky on one of our retail interior projects where he did an amazing long mural. So I just thought we should revive our minds as to our heritage and some other pieces of art and sculpture that actually was immersed in some of these spaces of, it could have been a hotel, could have been a retail space. So these artists really brought Sri Lankan heritage, tradition, but also modernized it in their own interpretation. And then we have Barbara Sansoni, of course, who also revolutionized the whole handloom industry by using local weavers and local craftsmen, and the whole space. As a youngster, I remember going into the barefoot shop, and it was just a very minimalist space. But these amazing colored fabrics and the way they had done cement shelving, a lot of it inspired us as young architects. So I just thought it'd be good to remember some of these retailers or entrepreneurs or designers or artists, whatever tag you want to put on them. These are just a few slides for us to. These are the little things that she did. She did this amazing book called Viharas and Verandas, where they catalogue all the old buildings in Sri Lanka, and then of course the heritage of an island. And these are some of her drawings. And then you can see some of their products itself and the beautiful colors that she brought in. And then of course Ina De Silva, she was a close friend of mine. I had the privilege of working together with her. She had a shop which was called the Serendip Gallery, and she sold batik somewhere on Gaul Road in the 60s or 70s. And she was again an amazing woman who did it very interesting. Like I would call her the Frida Kahlo of Sri Lanka. You know, she did amazing, colorful batiks, amazing woman. She dressed like that. This is just her day-to-day regular wear. If you meet her on an evening, she would have 5 hats, and she'd have amazing walking sticks. And so she created all these beautiful batiks that a lot of interior designers used as part of their decor, like you can see in the Bentata Beach Hotel. So this is some of her work, always very contemporary and revolutionary. And then of course, Annika Fernando, again, amazing entrepreneur, designer, and again changed the whole retail space. I remember one of our first experiences was as first year architecture students, we were taken to see the Paradise Road shop on Flower Road. It was a tiny little, almost like a little alleyway, and it had this amazing ochre colored walls and cement tables that had all the products, and he had used local craft and reinterpreted it. So I just thought it would be good for us when we begin this talk to really refresh our minds about these leading retail brands. So so let's start off with our talks. My first question from that would be actually to Annika, because Annika actually wears 2 hats, and one is that of a retailer, a designer, a fashion designer. Actually 3 hats: a retailer, a fashion designer, and an interior designer. So I want to ask Annika, being a revolutionary interior designer, and I know that you have refused to sort of bow down to popular demand and even any expectations of family tradition, because, by the way, Annika is Sham's daughter, right? I know she will hate, she has her own identity, and truly she has, because she's gone against her cousin. Taru is also an interior designer, but she's created her own identity. So Annika, I just want to ask you, what would you say as an interior designer, what was it that you tried to create as a unique aesthetic in your retail experience, in what you have done at PR? Because I've been to PR, there's a nice energy, there's a sort of a very slightly bohemian, slightly, for lack of a better word, a sort of wabi-sabi sort of vibe in the interior. So what would you say that you just tried in that creation of that interior?
Look, I don't think it's an interior that is stagnant. It's now 13 years and it has evolved with me. It's evolved with the product I showcase, the designers I work with, and so the space keeps evolving. I don't think it is, and you could say that is 2 things, because retail design is 2 things. You have retail interior design and you have visual merchandising. Those are actually two areas. So let's say the merchandising has dictated the interior experience and the ambience, which I'd say is very different to what it was when it started in 2013. I wouldn't say I go against my heritage and our incredible design sensitivity that we've all in Sri Lanka, we are inheriting as a legacy, and I am blessed to have it a little bit closer running in my veins. I wouldn't say it's that I go against it. I think it is about creating my own identity that is, I would say, something that I strive for as a person and also as an individual, but also as a business person. And look, we're a small pond, big fish, and we have a responsibility in what we do to showcase our island. I think our biggest, where our flag flyers for Sri Lanka tourism. We are showcasing through our spaces and what we present to the world of what we can create. I don't know if I've answered your question.
Yeah, I think to a certain extent. I'll come back to you because I have another question. But I thought I'll also cross over to Niloufer because Nilu, again, one of the shops I walked in many years ago. She had a shop at Majestic City. And one thing that really caught my attention was the natural material that she had used in your shop. I remember those cement tiles. It was the first time I saw cement tiles on the floor of a retail store. And then a lot of those chunky cement tables, you had the wooden planks. Tell us a little bit about, very quickly, maybe in a couple of minutes, the Cotton Collection story and what really inspired you to create, because I know, having worked with you, having worn the cap of architect with you, I know you come with very strong ideas when you sit, and there's a strong aesthetic. So tell us quickly, in a few words or a few sentences, at that time and age, maybe 30 years ago or 25 years ago, what made you think out of the box in the way you did your retail interior?
Not 25, Philip, you do me a favor. 35 years ago.
Okay, all right. I didn't want to sound so old.
It was a long time ago. So, you're talking about the interior. So I can just say it was inspired by my childhood. My dad used to take us every Sunday to the beach, and or it was either Sunday to the beach or it was rummaging around antique yards. And I grew up with that, and I loved it. And today, if you come into my house, you're tripping over antiques and broken stuff. And so that love of natural Sri Lankan beauty just fluid, just sort of was owned by me. And so when I opened my shops, I couldn't think of any other material. I love local stuff. And you're right about the cement press tiles in Majestic City. So many people came into my store just to see the flow. And it really was a beautiful flow, and I combined the things I liked, like you said, cement shelves. And I had a little kids section which you entered through oval wooden doors. But I have to tell you, like Annika said, I mean, in the sense that you had to evolve. Those wooden shelves, those cement shelves were completely practical, because you can't change, you can't do anything. But it was a beautiful store, and I think whatever store I did, and I think from my main store, which was Dhammaparama, the 143, which was quite an architectural beauty. And when I saw it, to me, there was no second choice, because it had everything I liked, from the high ceilings, the beautiful wooden floors, and the lovely painted tiles at the entrance. So those things just were natural to me, and also my brand is a cool, casual, carefree brand. It's and it all kind of added flavor to what I like.
Brought the story.
Brought the story to light, yeah.
Fine. I think we're going to now move on to my friend Shalin. Shalin for many years, and Shalin, we worked together as well. You have created a sort of and mastered a very distinctive style and a narrative for Sparsidon. You've been bold, you've been colorful, you have sort of, in a way, been iconic in what you have done. And I know that you're not an interior designer, neither are you an architect. Maybe thankful, because if you were an architect, you may have done very stereotype stuff. I know that you are the creative eyes and mind behind the rolling out of the Sparsidon brand. Tell us about the inspiration behind the current aesthetic that you've been following, the inspiration, the story, and also in a way, so I'm going to throw two questions at you, which I will hopefully throw at the others. You also tell us about what your thinking is. I'll come back to the second question. Let's first start with the first question.
Okay, firstly, Sparsilon is an experience, and we need Sparsilon to be an experience at every single point. So when someone comes in a spa salon store, it's not a process of coming to buy a product. The walk into the store is an experience as well, and it's very much telling the story of the brand. And it's wherever you go, we're in 31 countries now, across 140 odd stores, you have that experience, and it's multi-sensory, right? So it's not just the visual, but we've got music that we've created for the store, we've got fragrance that we've created for the store, every unit you see is created for the store, every light fixture, every ornament you see is custom created. So we wanted something that was very experiential and brought the store itself to become a destination. And it's very, very different. So even when you go to and see spa salon elsewhere in the world, when you generally go to a cosmetic floor in Europe and you're walking through the mall, everything is white and silver and very subtle colors and so on. And then you get a assault on your senses with spa salon. It's bang, it's color, it's fragrance, it's bold. And that really has helped us stand out. And in a crazy world where we are all subject to so much stimuli on our phone, if you don't stand out, you get lost. So with Spa Salon, our design is, I wouldn't say it's personal, but it's very calculated. Because we build spaces that tell the brand story. We look at our design in terms of handling footfall. We look at our design in terms of where we place what. There's a lot of data that go into how we lay out our floors as well. And keeping that experiential touch where people are immersed in it, people get to interact with it, people actually take pictures of it, people come looking for the store. So we have tourists who come to the store just to come to the store because it's a nice place to take pictures, it's very different, it's very synonymous with what Sri Lanka is. It's a huge part of showcasing thousands of years of Sri Lankan art and culture, which is also bold. Something I often have conversations about is Sri Lanka's art and culture and showcasing them in brands, and everyone says, oh, but you guys are so loud and so on. But the great thing about Sri Lanka's art and culture is we have thousands of years of art and culture. I was sitting on a stage just like this with, and talking about this with Chandra Daswaka, and he was talking about art and culture from his perspective, where it's very pull back and the Bava style stuff, and it's a pull back, whereas we are an assault. And both of it is still part of Sri Lankan art and culture, and there is so much to draw from being a brand, to tell the stories we need to tell, to be as immersive as we can. And that's how Spa Salon looks at design and interior design. So one is a very data-driven, building spaces that can handle people, looking at customer journeys, looking at shelf heights, all those things. And on the other side, is it telling our story effective enough that we stand out?
Just a quick question on that. Do you ever think that are we being too loud, are we being too bold? Or will it actually put off certain customers from coming? Because you spoke about, like, if you took a cotton collection, maybe a little bit more muted, and you're bringing in a sort of wellness brand, right? So in a way, wellness in somebody's mind would be all muted colors, sort of faded shades, etc. So how did you have that sort of visionary thinking to be bold enough to push the color palette?
See, it can't be color for the sake of having color. Everything has a reason for being there. If you look at every flower, every Spa Salon bold, bright flower in there, has some connection to the ingredient, and it matches up to a color. If you take our white rice range, just to give an example, the flowers on our white rice range are white and gold, and the flowers are created out of little rice grains. If you look at our turmeric range, it's the turmeric orange, and the flowers are created out of turmeric flowers. So everything has a reason for being there, and there's an authenticity to it. Also, the colors are not out of nowhere. It's very much a part of our culture. It's very much colors that can even be created naturally. So it all tells a larger story, and if the story you're telling is authentic and it all ties in, I don't think it's a problem. We've had these conversations with malls when we go overseas, because they see the design and say, hey, can you tone this down? And then I go and present and tell them the story, it changes everything. And standing out has been one of our biggest wins, and we wouldn't have been able to do it if we weren't this bold.
Thank you. Yes. Just going on to Hasib, because Hasib, you're the new kid on the block in terms of actual retailing. I know that you're opening your first new store. Right? So I thought I'd be interested to ask you as a in a way maybe a novice in the retail. I know that you come from a long tradition of creating clothing. Was there anything that made you think afresh looking at it? I mean, the typical way you would have done is just gone to an architect or interior designer with a brief, right? Was there something that you could share with us that you think you actually took upon yourself after you saw what's out there in the retail space in the creation of your first retail store?
Absolutely. So if you go back to it a little bit, Philip, we started off mainly doing product, say retail space. We didn't have our own store for the last 7 years. We began in 2018, and over the years we've been selling at over 300 doors in Sri Lanka and also overseas as well, in the Middle East and in Singapore as well. So the focus has been on creating excellent product, and our mantra sort of was, how do you say, affordable luxury. So that was the sort of space we wanted to cater at, and over the years what has happened is we've managed to increase our product offering per se. And so we started off pretty much mainly as a pants producer. So in our portfolio we had only pants to start with, and over the years the build-up in the product has come through. And then what we realized was we needed space to sort of showcase that. Say, while the revenue and the real margins will come from the mass retailers, but as what do you say, the multi-store outlets per se, where we'll get bulk of our turnover. But we wanted to give our consumer the experience, so the full product experience, and hence when we created our first store at One Golf Place, and which has only been little over a month, we put in a lot of effort into creating that experience, the visual element of it. So one of the main things we focused on was on the ceiling part of it, where we've got lighting coming in a special way, and certain other aspects, so where our product, sort of the experience, merges with the store. So it has been a first for us, and hopefully going into the future we'll probably do that a little bit more.
Thank you. Annika, I just caught on one interesting thing you said, which is it's I don't know if you understand, whether you yourself realized was a very deep and revolutionary thought. You said that the PR store is constantly evolving and constantly in a way, evolving would be the right word, and maybe recreating itself. Does that actually mean that you keep moving the retailing itself, the shelves or units or whatever, or you keep adding, you keep subtracting? It's a very interesting way to look at something, because which means if I go back to the store in 3 months or 4 months, my experience is different. And so that in itself, you could either debate saying, okay, would it confuse somebody, but I personally as a designer would find it very fascinating. Could you tell us a little bit more, elaborate on how you actually do that and what you intentionally do to create, recreate your space?
Our panel here, we've got 2 retailers who retail a brand, and they have to reflect that brand in their retail spaces, through and through. Niloufer and I have other brands, so often our spaces will evolve to what is on our shelves, which may vary. Maybe it's seasonal, maybe it's design-led. For me, sometimes because of being an interior designer, I get bored and I change things up. But
That's
also,
exactly what I thought was interesting. Yeah.
but also, I think we're dealing mostly with a very small market, and I have a very diverse offering of product. So that's where merchandising comes in, the visual merchandising. About you can have I could have the same customer coming in every week to my store, but they'll see something different, which might have been there for the last 6 months, and they hadn't seen it. So that's where sort of presenting the product sort of changes. I also think diversity, so you talked about pair-back design and loud design, and both being in our heritage. And I think that's really important offering of what Sri Lanka is in diversity. And when we kind of, I think as a result, Niloufer and I, it is safer to have, let's say, a little bit more of a passive, neutral canvas, which allows the product to speak forward. Whereas Shalin, it's through and through. The authenticity comes from the entire experience through that. But there are touch points. There are certain things that are consistent. Our scent in our stores been mint since we started, and we have a mint jar on the cashier counter, and we'll have customers who open a package that gets delivered somewhere in the world and open it and get that fragrance. But one day could be a piece of batik, one day could be a silk gown. So
I like the fact about this whole thing. I think I'll probably get Shalin's opinion on that. The fluidity of a retail space, and as I have seen Niloufer do that. Yeah, that your space is constantly fluid, and products keep moving around. I've seen this. I've seen maybe even leading designer brands do this. Like I walk into a shop 3 days later, and the products have been moved around. But this whole concept of an evolving interior, right, and a constantly fluid interior could be maybe Annika struck on a new retailing formula, right? And I think that's quite cool that you have a completely fluid interior that keeps changing a lot. I know it's difficult in terms of cost, but really leave all your structures out of your mind, throw all of that out of your minds, and think afresh. And what if you had a space where you had a completely fluid interior that keeps evolving all the time? And this is my thought, is that I think the future of retailing may be minimalism. I may be wrong, I may be right, but the whole world seems to be going into a sort of a lesser space of, a lot of it is less about the touch and feel, but maybe about the visual and the experiential. So Shalin, maybe on that point, what do you think about a very, let's say you completely revolutionized Parcel and you came up with a new idea of a very fluid space. What do you think? What are your thoughts about that?
See, I think what we need to understand is the kind of product or service we're selling as well. So what Annika does is very niche. What I do is, or both of us do, is a little more, it's not mass, but it's mass stage, right? So you're looking at, on an average day, 200 people coming into your store, 250 people coming in the store, or 9,000 people in a month, right? So you're looking at a lot of people coming, and also there are a lot of people who are buying the same thing over and over again because it's cosmetics and it's part of their routine, who come and buy it every month. They like their stuff to be where they know it is. Because it's that kind. It's not a special, not every purchase is a special purchase. It's your daily routine purchases. So for them, having their, let's say their body lotion or their day cream where they know it is, makes sense. At the same time, we need to create excitement for the people just walking in and for people coming for their experience. So we need to match up both sides of that. So what we do with it is what happens on the edges of the store or the wall units are standard, and any store you go to, your departments are the same. So when you walk into a spa salon store, if you go looking for something, you know where it is, and we don't mess with that too much. What we do is we move around what's in the center, based on seasonality, based on what we're doing, based on launches. We also have a huge number of SKUs. We are looking at about 1,000 SKUs, and there's a new churn of about 25 SKUs coming every quarter, right? So it's a lot of product coming and going. So complete fluidity won't work for us for these two reasons, but keeping things exciting, yes. In terms of the minimalistic thing, I tend to disagree, because looking at retail, we spend a lot of time looking at retail. If you look at retail, particularly say European retail and Asian retail, I think Asian retail has changed tremendously. If you look at China, Korea, even Japan to an extent, Thailand, European retail is very, very dramatic, very display oriented, whereas Asian retail is very immersive. They want people to interact with product. Simple example is, you even take Louis Vuitton. Louis Vuitton flagship store in, say, Italy versus Louis Vuitton's flagship store in Thailand is very different. It's very immersive, there's a lot of tech, they want people interacting. And the other one is very grand and has that sense of European luxury. So I think our space in particular is moving to very much of an immersive space where there's going to be a lot of tech involved, there's going to be a lot of interaction involved with the consumer will play with product, and maybe not purchase in store, but connect to the digital world as well. So it's becoming kind of like a 360 space where your stores are going to be beacons for your brands, and a lot of connectivity where the consumer is immersed and can connect at every point of the retail experience.
Yeah, I think that was my next question about this whole experiential thing about retail design, that the world is becoming, and it's a lot about being experiential. But Hasib, as a newcomer in the retail space, and I'm sure you've done a lot of research and looking into that, and also I'll come to Annika, to you as well as an interior designer. I do see retail experiences where there's so much of design, so much of experience, and so much of attempt to create excitement through the space. I've been to even a Prada store, or they have an iconic stairway, or an amazing chandelier, or a mobile. Right? What are your thoughts? I mean, should a retailer be just so focused on only selling their product, or really have a balance between creating an interesting architectural space and an experience to the consumer? That question would go to you next as well.
So, interesting. Say this gives me a little bit of insight, because since 2018 we've been working with retailers in Sri Lanka, large number of retailers. And what we've seen is people who've actually invested in their store experience, the interior of it, and have kept up over the years. They have captured market share. So even, say, probably we might not realize, not only in Colombo, but even out of Colombo. So for example, even in Weeraratne, say in Jaffna or God, people have invested in retail space. And those players have seen their market share gone up. Also, what has happened is people have also invested into giving the consumer a good experience as well. And some of those who have not done that, the more traditional retailers probably have lost some market share over the years, and the new players have taken over. So,
All right. Same question about experiential design and creating certain iconic reference points. I've been to stores that there's an amazing stairway or sculptural stairway. You could have done with ordinary staircase, or you're an incredible mobile that occupies so much of your space. And that in a retail experience, is that necessary?
Well, in my own personal, in my spaces, it's very much led by me. So and that's why it probably, as I said, keeps evolving too. Having an experience of it being authentic, and the space adding to the whole shopping experience is, it comes down to authenticity. In this day and age, right, everyone can be a designer. Go onto Pinterest, that looks good, and I'll stick my bottle of water in that. And you know what, I'll take some great photographs and put it on Instagram. And then, does a person feel connected to that brand? Do they find that authenticity when they go to the store? Or is there a disconnect with what you see on social media and the space that you're visiting? You see that so much in F&B now. And I think we're seeing it a lot in retail because, you know what, everyone can be an interior designer, everyone can be a graphic designer, everyone can be, you can even create your own logo. We don't need anyone anymore. So I think there's been a major shift, at least I have seen it in my own spaces, from online shopping and people wanting to be immersed in a brand. People want, I think maybe it's post-COVID, people want to touch, feel, smell, experience brands. And so that retail experience is really important. Having something that is unique is important because that's what makes it authentic. It's, you know, we come from a design heritage. How we take that inspiration but move forward without copying and imitating, being inspired and then becoming inspiration. Those are all, maybe I've gone beyond your question.
You are, I'm smiling at myself because you are touching on my next question.
Philip, can I just quickly jump in on one comment?
Sure.
Something you asked earlier, you said, how is it all about selling product or is design important? Look, it's retail design, it's got to sell product, right? Because you guys are designers, right? But I'm the client also and I'm the brand owner. For me, at the end of the day, you do need to sell product. The business has to go on, right? So the design has to tell the story that it creates some sort of immersion in the brand, and it has to lend itself to that brand experience that ends up selling product. Whether you sell product on the day or at a later date, or whether it's just brand immersion and they come back and they be connected to the brand and that causes product sale. But yes, we must sell product. It's
True.
my
True. Yeah, I think you gave a brutal answer there. But I think Niloufer, just since you've been a pioneer in the industry, if I were to ask you an honest question, how do you see current retail? I mean, I know you go to a lot of stores and you know what's going on in the market and in the scene. What is your honest opinion about where we are as a country in the design of retail spaces and what we are creating right now?
So Philip, if you're talking about what we are now to what we were, there's a huge jump. Many years ago, there was no concept of retail design, no concept of branding. People just bought and put on the shelves and sold and made money. Today it's different. Today concept of retail is so important. And I think you see a lot of people, not only in the retail sphere, in F&B, in everything coming up with such beautiful concepts. And you asked where we are in Sri Lanka right now, correct?
Yeah.
And yeah, especially if you look at leaving aside Colombo, if you go down south, it's booming. The design element, everything is just so different. And what I really like is so many of them use our Sri Lankan aesthetics, which is beautiful in some form or shape. And I think that lends a different style to what Colombo and Sri Lanka is turning out to be.
So I will quickly ask the rest of the panelists whether they agree. Annika, would you really agree, or are you happy with what you can see right now in the overall retail space as to what's going on in Colombo as well as in some of the tourism zones?
Right. There's so much to that question. Look, we need more. Competition is healthy in retail because it leads to choice. If someone comes back to you, it's because you're doing something right or you're being authentic to your brand. What is happening down south, I think, yes, it's great because you have a lot of, look, there is more, we're creating more, it's different, look, south is another very big story, but you've got a lot of foreign retailers with different exposure coming into the country and creating new exposure for maybe locals who don't have the opportunity to travel overseas and get physical exposure, that they are limited by the social media world. Yes. Look, is our growth in retail bringing in more international brands, or is it our local retailers, local retailers offering something authentic? I think that is the fight, and I would love to see more. But more, as I said, more authenticity, being inspired from out and moving forward, not imitating, not taking concepts and putting pieces together. I mean, how many spa salon imitations can you drive around Sri Lanka? I mean, do we really need to be inspired by the fishbowl that we're in? There is so much that we can be inspired by. Do we need to be copying one another? Or can we just, take that inspiration, say, yes, I acknowledge this inspiration, and I'm proud of what you're doing, and now I do something new. That I would love to see more of. I think we have to move out of that small.
Yeah, I think you're going to answer my next question in a sense. But I think that's great, because I think the conversation is leading in a particular way. One of the reasons why I showed you Lucky Senonaka, Ina De Silva, another significant person I missed out was Chloe De Souza and Barbara Sansoni, is that what was amazingly radical about what they did was they took what was our heritage, but for that day and age, which is like about 40 odd years ago or even more, they completely reinvented that and came up with something extremely radical at that time and age, in what Ina's prints, or the way Barbara Sansoni did her colors on her handlooms, to the way Lucky Senonaka looked at art and sculpture. And so one of the things that I was hoping would come through this panel would be like another renaissance of that sort that came out of a lack. They didn't have access to imported items, they didn't have access to many things. And so I'm hoping that there are some young designers here as well, and I'm hoping that we can inspire each other, that we could recreate this renaissance of re-looking, and like you very rightly said, Annika, looking deeper. We don't need to copy Spa Salon, or somebody doesn't need to copy PR, but can we really go back and reinvent a particular identity? But now my question to you, Shalin, on that would be that kind of reinvented identity, I know it will work well for a Spa Salon, because you're now bringing in sort of a heritage-related, sort of local-based product. But could you have that sort of a reinvention or a renaissance of our heritage for a brand like Mercedes? How would you look at that?
Look, it's the largest story of selling, right? So now, look at Uncle's, right? You can say, hey, Uncle sells different alcohols from different parts of the world. How can we bring it all together? And all we can do is a pretty bar, but it's a brand in itself. And the interior matches it, the t-shirts they matches it, the coaster matches it, the little accessories matches it, and they've latched on to a part of culture. The content they're doing matches that as well. The language they use matches that as well, right? Yes, they're serving alcohol from around the world, but they've managed to bridge it by bringing a cultural piece that tells a story of who they are. And that's what great brands do. You tell a story of who you are, and when you tell a story of who you are, people start listening to the story. When people start listening to the story, it embeds as memory. When it embeds as memory, and there's emotional connect, that is brand. And that's when cool things start to happen, and that's when the brand connection happens. Why do you want to go all the way down the street to have a drink at Annika? Because it latches into that identity of it, right? So that's where design and marketing really come together when you start telling stories through your spaces, when you start telling stories through your products, and the stories you tell start affecting people on an emotional level. Right? This famous Maya Angelou quote, "I never leave a stage without saying it. People will forget what you do, people will forget what you say, people will never forget the way you make them feel." And that's what great spaces do. And if that comes from a place of consistency, and it's telling an authentic story, it's going to get embedded. And that's what great design is about, at least from my perspective.
I think creating that experience, I think the whole purpose of the talk today was really not just, because I think the first topic that I was given was something about it being pretty and beauty, and I said, no, we need to go a little bit more deeper than pretty and beauty, and I think that's what the Sri Lanka Design Festival is all about. I think is that is going back into our heritage, really re-exploring what we're doing up to now, and so every year this becomes a moment of a pause to reflect and rethink. So there's this, in my architectural world, people always come asking for this Sri Lankan style, or or it could be like I'd rather call it an island aesthetic than a Sri Lankan style. And so I think in closing, what I would really like to discuss is there actually something called a Sri Lankan style? Should we actually be, so there are a multi-layered question that I'll just throw it openly for any one of you to answer it. Should there actually be something called a Sri Lankan style? Or should it be a island aesthetic? Or should it be an Asian, sort of an Asian modern aesthetic? Should one have that? Should we really get sort of close in? Or have an interpretation? Like what you saw, what all these guys did, like what Lucky did, what Ina did, what all of them did, is an interpretation. Should we get caught up in that, or should we be, or should we just be international? Like sometimes our architecture can be very international. It can be just international minimalist. Right? So my question to all of you would be: should we? Maybe I'll start off with you.
That comes down to authenticity. To say that, let's say people like Barbara Sanzoni, Shalin Fernando, Ina da Silva were not inspired by, movements and things that were going on in other parts of the world.
They were, or they were not?
Of course they were.
Exactly.
Of course they were. And you see that in architecture, in the Bauhaus movement. I mean, those are shifts that happen, and we should be proud of every element of that contributes to what has evolved as a Sri Lankan style. It's not one style, it's diverse. It's like our food. We've got elements of, Tamil, you've got burger, you've got, we've got to embrace every element of what makes us unique and in our offering, which is diverse.
So if you go like say one layer deeper than that, would you say it's the experiences of travel and experience of being aware of what's happening out there in the global retail space, and then to bring it back here, or in the global, let's say F&B or global hospitality or whatever it may be, and then bring it back and reinventing it to suit an aesthetic?
We're all a bit mixed up. We're all a bit of a pickle. Right? And why not acknowledge each little bit of that and celebrate it? I mean, we, can frown on our colonizers, but we can be proud of what they've brought to our country. And just say, okay, there's some bad times, but what have we been left with that's positive? Kicked out coffee, and we say hello to tea and celebrate that. We can, that's opening myself to little dangerous topics here, but, Sri Lankan style isn't what is originally Sri Lankan. I mean, we'd have to go way back.
I think that's what I'm trying to get at, this going deep on an aesthetic rather than it being very superficial. that you don't just plaster your walls with, for a lack of a better description, a CD fresco or a Tambula painting or something like that, and then call it a Sri Lankan style. But really being able to go many layers deeper, like you were saying, Shalin, how you bring in the ingredients into the representation of your interior. And so I think we are at the beginning of that renaissance. What would you guys, and even Niloufer and Hasib, you can contribute to this, what would you do as a closing statement to inspire maybe some of the younger people here, and including ourselves, we are also part of the younger group here, to say, okay, how do we go a little more deeper now in re-looking at retail spaces or in the creation of it, beyond just throwing a batik or a piece of driftwood on a table or that kind of superficiality. How can we go a little more deeper?
Go back a little bit, Philip. Say, if you look at, I'm going to talk specifically from fashion retail perspective, right? So if we go back a little bit into the supply chain, into the chain, in terms of design, we've got excellent designers in this part of the world. I think the designers from this part of the world are co-creating for world-famous brands. And I think that part of it, we're way ahead, probably we're ahead of a lot of other places in the world. Then if we come to the next stage, the creation of the product itself, we probably can create the best of products compared to anyone else in the world. Say there are facilities available in this part of the world, people have invested, and there is skill and creativity in creating fashion product. So in those two senses, in design and manufacturing, we are probably up there with the rest of the world. So say if we take when we come to the last part of the chain, the retail and the brand building, marketing part of the chain, we are probably a little bit behind. We are not on par with the rest of the world. But that being said, like Niloufer was saying earlier, over the last few years, we have come a long way, and there is pockets of excellence. It's probably what you're talking about, the Sri Lankan aesthetic is still not formalized yet. Something to say, for example, if you talk about the Japanese aesthetic, people would immediately understand what it is all about. So the Sri Lankan aesthetic is being formalized at the moment, in my opinion. And with the skill, the creativity we've got in this part of the world, I don't think we're very far away from creating excellent brands and finishing the whole chain. So I think Sri Lanka and Sri Lankan brands itself have excellent opportunity to capture the whole chain and be world class at it. But right now, we are not there yet.
Thank you. I think that's a very honest but real statement. I think that's, in a way, that would be my sentiment as well. And how we explore this further could be something that maybe even the Sri Lanka Design Festival could look at in our future engagements and our future talk. How do we create maybe even a workshop where people are able to sit together, and even hopefully if the panelists have time to come and really sit around the table and explore this possibility, like you were saying, about this island aesthetic. Again, I'm just coming back to you in closing as a pioneer in the industry, and having looked at the aesthetic, the island aesthetic many a time. I think Hasib made a very, very pertinent, brutal but honest point, is that we have really excelled in designing, let's say, clothing in that instance, but really in the creation of the interior of a retail store, we have still a long way to go, because as you said, you walk into a space, you can identify Japanese aesthetic. Right? Are there any pointers that you could give a designer? Because I know you always led the way in design, so are there any pointers you could give designers to be more mindful about how could you really reinforce that identity even more?
So I think it just depends on the brand also, what your brand identity is. I think everything flows from that. If your brand identity lends to using Sri Lankan aesthetics, then yes. But if your brand is a very modern brand, very minimalistic brand, then it's an option that you can use what you like. But also, as I think Annika was saying, Sri Lankan, the Sri Lankan is so many ways. You can revolutionize it, you can modernize it, you can globalize it. It's just the things that you pick out of it, from art from Ina de Silva, from the gardens from Lucky. I mean, it's huge. Shalin Fernando. I mean, my house, for instance, I don't know what I would do without Shalin, but in every sense of the word. It depends on what your brand is, how you want to talk to your customers, and yeah.
Can I add something
I will
here?
not add to that. So yeah, and yeah.
Look, I agree that there doesn't have to be one thing called a Sri Lankan aesthetic. But here's the deal. The world is discovering Sri Lanka for the first time, really, okay? Let's be honest about that as well. For the first time when you go out and travel and you say Sri Lanka, someone's gone there, someone's thinking about going there, someone knows about it, and so on and so forth. So our country is being discovered for the first time. Now when people come into this country, people are looking for experiences authentic to this country. Granted, every brand cannot be an authentic experience to Sri Lanka, but here is the opportunity for you designers, for brands, to tell the Sri Lankan stories. Stories of culture, stories of art, stories of creativity, on multiple things, and create those authentic experiences, because those are going to get noticed because they're different to everything they're seeing in Thailand and Dubai and Japan and so on and so forth, right? But at the same time, yes, there'll be the Thai restaurant and the Japanese place and so on and so forth, but there is opportunity for us as an undiscovered land in a world that's looking for new experiences to create those experiences. But it only works if the brand that you are designing the space for is telling the same story. Like Niloufer says, if it makes no sense to what you're selling in it or the brand experience, it makes no sense. But we really need to be conscious of the fact that people are discovering this country and coming in. We need to create experiences that draw from some level of this melting pot of culture we have and the different eras we've gone through.
Shalin, if I can just say one thing, what Hasib said is very true. When you go to Japan, you can tell the Japanese interior straight away. And maybe that's something we need to work on, where it stands out.
Yeah, I mean, we've had a label that is actually, we can take ownership on, which is tropical modernism. We hear it now a lot more. And Bali has been using it for a lot longer. But they actually say that that has come because Bava spent time in Bali. And they took it. So actually we are claiming it back. And that is definitely let's say a Sri Lankan style. What do people come, let's say from India, closest neighbor, why do they come to Sri Lankan designers? They want inside-outside spaces. We are known for that. Where, yes, because we live in paradise and we don't have those sort of extremes in weather that allow for us to enjoy an inside-outside space more than probably many other countries in the world. But that is something I think we are claiming back now, because people are coming back and saying, hey, Sri Lanka is different from India. Sri Lanka offers something that is unique. And you know, us actually, as Sri Lankans, learning to be proud of it, because that's what it is. When I opened PR first, actually it was the expats who embraced the local product first.
But that always is the
It was our locals afterwards who would say, my gosh, no,
the locals don't really appreciate what...
I'd prefer to spend this much on a Zara dress. There are 1,000 of them. Then spend it on one piece by a local designer. So we've been, and I think that's where India has excelled, because of possibly led by the fact that they had a closed economy. So they had no choice but to be inspired and take India forward. Whereas we were always looking outside, and everything that was outside was better than what we had. And now, yes, when the world is acknowledging what is Sri Lankan food, Sri Lankan product, Sri Lankan ingredients are so unique, and this little paradise there And we are learning to say, you know what, we're selling it through what we do and being proud of it. That's where it starts. And lifting each other up, because we're the first to tear each other down.
So I think I'm going to conclude on that because I think there's another session. But honestly, I think this is exactly what I envisioned in this panel discussion, that we could have this kind of discussion, and that's why I think we carefully chose this panel to be able to challenge each other. I think it would be fabulous if we could take this discussion or even create a workshop or something that could really bring something out of it. Because really, I mean, the whole purpose of you guys contributing your time to be here is not just because you want 1 hour to spare, but really be able to contribute to the retail design space of Sri Lanka. So once again, I want to thank all 4 of you for not just taking the time, but your enthusiasm shown towards this, from the time we spoke about this, and your engagement, and also, I know Shalin's left a family holiday, and I'm sure all of you have different family engagements to be here today, and I hope it has inspired some of you or all of you to some extent. Thank you for bearing with us.
Thank you very much, Philip, for expertly guiding this discussion, and also our panelists. Thank you so much for a very insightful discussion.